Today we are starting a brand new series. You excited for this? I'm excited for this. It's called Face to Face, Seeing God for Who He Really Is. And, we talk, obviously, the world even talks a lot about God and who He is. And a lot of it's wrong. And a lot of people talk about who God is in the church, and it's wrong. And so by going back to the beginning of these beautiful words in John's gospel, the hope for us today is that we will start to see God for who He really is. And that's the goal of this Christmas season, that we may see God for who He really actually is. And what better way to start than in the Gospel of John? The Gospel of John, probably, I don't know if you're allowed to have favorites, but it's my favorite gospel. We may just keep going through the book of John even after Christmas is over, because it's such a beautiful gospel where we see so many wonderful interactions with Jesus. But today we're kind of starting with the prologue in John's gospel. It's a very famous passage. But before we get there, I want to start with a story. So on the northern coast of the Hawaiian island of Molokai lies a narrow peninsula called Kalaupapa. It's my best I can do, okay? Kalaupapa. And the island's geography, even if you look at it on your Google Maps, not now, but later, the island's geography, it naturally separates the peninsula of Kalaupapa from the rest of the island. So in the late 1800s, actually, what happened was anyone diagnosed with leprosy would be sent to this isolated peninsula of the island. And there, really, these lepers were forever abandoned and isolated from the rest of society. And then comes along, enter a young Belgian priest named Father Damien. For 12 years, Father Damien lived among the lepers of Kalaupapa. He shared their food, he cleaned their wounds, he built homes, made coffins, even dug their graves. All of this to share his faith with these lepers. But if you look at his life and ministry, there was one moment that changed everything. One day while Father Damien was washing, some scalding hot water fell on his foot. Anything. And then looking closer, he saw that his skin had these small white patches beginning to spread. Of course, both of these are signs that he had contracted leprosy himself. So the following Sunday, he stood up in front of his then small congregation, and he shocked everyone when he started with the words, "We lepers, we lepers." So Father Damien was no longer now just a priest. He was no longer just helping them. Now he was actually one of them. Now he fully identified with the people who he came to serve. He shared their condition, he shared their suffering, and he eventually even shared their death. Of the approximate, get this, of the approximate 800 lepers that were on this peninsula, 600 of them would eventually come to faith as Father Damien ministered as a fellow leper. Father Damien's life is a beautiful picture of what the Christmas story is all about. It's about a God who steps into frailty and weakness and pain. It's about a God who enters into the human condition to fully identify with us, yet, of course, without sin. It's about a God who refused to love us from afar, but instead chose to draw so near to us. C.S. Lewis helps us grasp this incredible thing that has happened, this magnitude of what it meant for Jesus to step into the world. Listen to this. Imagine for the moment that your dog, and every dog, is in deep distress. Some of us love dogs very much. I do. I have two. I love my dogs. But if it would help, think about it this. If it would help all the dogs in the world to become like men, would you be willing to become a dog? Would you put down your human nature, leave your loved ones, your job, hobbies, your art and literature and music, and choose instead of the intimate communion with your beloved, the poor substitute of looking into the beloved's face and wagging your tail, unable to smile or speak? Christ, by becoming man, limited the thing which to him was the most precious thing in the world, his unhampered, unhindered communion with the Father. Would you be willing to become a dog? That's what Jesus did. He stepped down from eternity and lived among us. He traded heaven's glory to live among the lepers. So go ahead and turn your Bibles to John chapter 1. This is the first part in our brand new series, Face to Face. And the message for today is called, The Logos Became Flesh. The Logos became flesh. So let's look at the first 5 verses of the book of John. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So John opens his gospel with the words, in the beginning, which of course echo the very first words of the book of Genesis in Scripture. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And now John starts his gospel with a slight variation of that. He says, in the beginning was the Word. More specifically, using the Greek word for word, he begins with, in the beginning was the Logos, Now, John uses that word very, very, very intentionally, logos. See, now stay with me here. You want some Greek philosophy today? That doesn't seem very convincing, but it's going to make a lot of sense, all right? So in his day, Greek philosophers taught that behind the harmony and order of the universe, right? I mean, think about it. The universe is very harmonious and orderly, right? Look at the stars, the planets. It's all so precise. And the Greek philosophers would say that behind that order and harmony stood a cosmic spiritual principle called the Logos. So they said, out of all of the harmony and order that we observe in the universe, in the world, it all functions out of the Logos. So think of it this way, okay? Recently, Gwen and I have been doing some home improvements. Some paint, Gwen said, because it's been her that's been doing the home improvements. But anyway, new curtain rods, new curtains, new vanity mirror in our downstairs bedroom. We did have to call in her dad because we put some holes in the wall. But anyway, we've been attempting to do some home improvement projects. And when we've bought something to install, like the new vanity or whatever, it comes with an instruction manual. Okay, the instruction manual, if you've ever gotten one or if you've ever looked at one, it outlines what the product is and how to use the product properly and how it can function properly and what may be wrong if things aren't functioning properly. Okay, and if the product functions in line with the instruction manual, it works great. But if it's functioning out of line with the instruction manual, well, it doesn't function properly, as we have discovered in our home improvement projects. When the product isn't working as the instruction manual says it should. So that's what the Greeks believed this logos to be, okay? They believed that this logos was the instruction manual of the universe and of life itself. And they taught that if we align ourselves, if we learn to align ourselves with the logos, our lives in turn will be harmonious and orderly and will function properly. And if we don't align with the logos, well, then we won't be content or function as we should. Make sense? Get in line with the logos, because all of the harmony and order of the universe comes out of the logos. So if we're functioning within the logos, our lives will be harmonious and orderly, okay? Now, the Greeks believed that the logos was an impersonal and abstract set of standards that could be discerned and discovered, deduced through just contemplation and ascendance of thought. Basically, a bunch of dudes sitting around all day philosophizing about the universe. That's how we got in touch with the logos, the Greek philosophers said. But John did something that blew them all away. He came along and he calls the logos he. John is saying there is a logos. There is a logos. There is a cosmic spiritual principle behind the functioning of the entire universe. There is something behind all of the harmony and all of the order in the world. But this cosmic spiritual principle of the universe is not an impersonal or abstract set of standards. It's a single person who can be known, who can be loved, who can even be seen. So that means, according to John, that we are connected to the very heart of reality, not through contemplation or ascendant thought as the Greeks were teaching, but John said that we are connected to the very heart of reality by knowing this person. And when we know this person and align ourselves with him, with the logos, well, what happens? Our lives are harmonious and orderly, and we function properly. And if we don't align with this person, the logos, well, we won't be content and we won't function as we should. So, who is this person? Who is this logos? Well, John goes on to say in the rest of verse 1 and 2, he says that the logos was, look what he says, with God. So this indicates that the logos is a unique being. But at the same time, he says the logos was God and was in the beginning with God, which indicates that this logos is eternal, like God. So John is saying that the logos is a specific person, unique from God, yet is the same substance as God. Then in verse 3, he further describes the logos by saying, all things were made through the logos, and without him was not anything made that was made. Other passages in the New Testament expand on this idea. Look what Paul writes in Colossians. For by him, by this specific person, all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Doesn't that sound like the Logos. Then in Hebrews chapter 1, it's even more specific. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by who? His Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things. Look, through whom he also created the world. Well, all of this points to the Logos being the person of Jesus Christ. He is the Logos. See, through Jesus, the Logos of the universe, it's revealed to all mankind that in verse 4, why? That we as mankind may have life. Life. In him, the Logos, in the Logos was life, and the life was the light of men. Right? That song we sang earlier that Lillian beautifully expanded on. We're not made to be tending a grave. We're called by name. We're called to life as human beings. Jesus brought life, and we're called to function in that life. But then comes verse 5. Look at verse 5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, in his commentary on the Gospel of John, D.A. Carson referred to this verse, I love this, as a masterpiece of planned ambiguity. What does that mean? Well, it means if you study the Greek word here that John very intentionally uses a very vague word that means several different things to drive home a point. This is reflected in the amplified version of verse 5. Look how it puts it. And it says, the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness did not understand it, or overpower it, or appropriate it, or absorb it, and is unreceptive to it. Oh, I mean, it's a lot of words, right? And the darkness has not overcome it. But it's actually more than that. It's an ambiguous word that encapsulates all of those different things. So what exactly is John trying to communicate here by using this word? Well, after writing this beautiful description of the Logos being this person and that the Logos of the universe has been revealed to all mankind, John makes the point in verse 5 that this Logos, this person, has been rejected by mankind. And by his planned ambiguity, John is communicating that Jesus, the light, has been rejected for a variety of reasons. Darkness did not understand it, overpower it, appropriate it, or absorb it. In other words, it's just unreceptive to it. So let's look at these rejections briefly because even just look at the world, right? There are many ways in which the world rejects Jesus, the Logos. And here are some of them. Number one, Jesus is rejected when people misunderstand him. That's a form of rejection. Look at what John writes later in John 6, what happens with this crowd of people following Jesus. Verse 60, it says, many of his disciples said, this is very hard to understand. How can anyone accept it? Jesus was aware that his disciples were complaining, so he said to them, does this offend you? Then what will you think if you see the Son of Man ascend to heaven again? The Spirit alone gives eternal life. Human effort accomplishes nothing, and the very words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But some of you do not believe me. For Jesus knew from the beginning which ones didn't believe, and he knew who would betray him. Then he said, that is why I said that people can't come to me unless the Father gives them to me. And look at this, look at verse 66. At this point, many of his disciples turned away and deserted him. And why did they do this? Because they misunderstood him. But that's rejecting Jesus as well. So Jesus is rejected when people misunderstand him. Jesus is also rejected when people resist him. This happens, for example, when religious leaders or political powers or cultural movements or whatever the case may be. This is what happens when people actively try to stop him or resist him. Still happening today. Number 3, Jesus is rejected when people misuse him. When the name of Jesus is used to further political or personal agendas, that's also a rejection of Jesus. And that's actually what taking the Lord's name in vain really means, by the way. It's using the name of Jesus, using the name of God for a purpose for our own personal gain. And we still see that today. And number 4, Jesus is rejected when people refuse to, I love that word, absorb him. See, though the light, it shines clearly. Romans chapter 1 says that man is without excuse. It's clear. Though the light shines clearly, many people are unreceptive to the light. Look what John writes later in chapter 12. Though he had done so many signs before them, they still did not believe in him. See, there are a variety of reasons for the rejection of Jesus, but John is driving home the point, whatever the reason is, Jesus, the Logos of the universe, has been and still is rejected by the world. We'll get to these couple verses later in the series, but look at verse 10 and 11. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. There it is again, it's the Logos. Yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. And since the Logos, the one who orders and sustains the universe, since the Logos has been rejected, anyone who rejects him for any reason will find themselves, what do they find themselves? Well, they find themselves out of sync with how life is meant to function. As St. Augustine famously said, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee." The restlessness and the discontentment and discord that we see in the world. Maybe you're even here today and you feel that in your own life because you don't know Jesus. Whatever the case may be, this restlessness and discontentment and discord we see in the world, it's not random. It's a result of humanity's rejection of the Logos. That's why the world's so out of sync, people, because we've rejected the Logos of the universe, the one who stands behind it all. We've rejected. You know, Christmas time is the only time of year. Think about it. You ever think about this? Like, it's the only time of year where you can be, walking in a shopping mall or eating at a restaurant or listening to a radio that's not, whatever, K-Love or Shine, whatever, Reach, whatever it is, that's not overtly Christian, and you hear deep theology echoing through the whole world. Right? It's a kind of a crazy, unique time of year where we have these songs of deep theology everywhere in the world. And one of those songs is "O Holy Night." And it captures the essence of what I'm talking about here today, of humanity's rejection of the Logos. It has this line that says, "Long lay the world in sin and error pining." You know what pining means? It means aching, longing, yearning. It's restlessness. That's the world, restlessness, a pining. It's describing, this song is describing a world that is out of sync with the Logos because of its rejection of him. But remember what comes next in that song. Till he appeared, and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Here's what Christmas is all about. Though he knew the logos of the universe, though he knew that the world would reject him, the logos didn't reject the world. That's what it's all about. Even in the face of this rejection, for all of those different reasons, the Logos appeared. He came near. He moved into our neighborhood. He moved in to a people who would reject him. John 1:14, here it is. This is what it's all about. And the Word, the Logos, became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory. Glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace, full of truth. I found an article written by a physician named Ed Leap that I want to share with you. It's truly incredible. He said, over and over again, I have asked suicidal or depressed patients what is pushing them to the brink. Their answer is so consistent that it must have a deeper meaning than we realize. I'm no good, they tell me. Sometimes they are hearing voices, so I ask what the voices say, that I'm worthless, that I should die. The problem is perennial. As long as humans have existed, we have sensed that we were not something that we ought to be. As long as we have been wounded by family, friends, or strangers, we have doubted our worth. The cure for all the fractured suffering of the human heart, all the terror we visit upon one another, all the guilt we bear with bent spines our whole lives, all the horrible condemning voices, is the fact of grace. Grace, I propose, is the greatest concept in human history. This season, we celebrate the birth of the author of grace. He came to earth worthless and was born into oppression and domination. He came to a place and people broken, and in the end was broken himself. The author of grace was told by many that he was no good, that he was a liar, that he was useless, deluded, and mad. Finally, he received the ultimate rejection and insult and paid with his life. He was broken for the broken and hated for the hated. He was despised and rejected so that the despised and rejected would have a hero and comforter. And yet in all of it, he announced the cure of grace. He told us what we already knew, that we were broken and needed repair. He told us the repair would be free for the taking, that we were all loved in spite of the voices in our heads, the words of our enemies and cruelties of our family and friends. In bringing us grace, he changed the world. He said that we could never do enough to be truly good, but we could share his goodness and accept the gift he offered. In that fell swoop, he negated any other contingent therapy for the misery of humanity. No wealth or position could cure our loneliness. No rule or law could overcome our weakness. No plan or good deed could earn our healing. Only the gift he brought. Only himself. At Christmas, Jesus shouts down the voices in our ears with, "You are worth everything to me. I'll make you good. You don't need to die. I came to do it for you, then you'll really live." At Christmas, the cure of grace embodied came for all. Brokenness was broken at last. Man, the Logos became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, at Christmas time, we celebrate the miraculous event we call the Incarnation. You hear that word before, right? The Incarnation, when the Logos, think about it now. The Logos, the eternal divine one who by all things were created through him and for him, the Logos became flesh. What? And dwelt among us. The Logos, the Word, Jesus, the Son of God, became human while remaining fully divine. He who was there before the foundation of the world, who spoke and it came to be, he humbled himself. He humbled himself by experiencing the full range of human emotion and experience. My goodness. And he did all of it, all of this, to simply reveal his love for those, for us, who would reject him. Man. Philippians chapter 2 reminds us of what this means. Though he was God, he did not think equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. The Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. Now, I grew up in an old Methodist church. You ever been in an old Methodist church, right? I read children's storybook Bibles. I had Sunday school with the little felt people, you know, the felt boards. You know, you move around, here's the felt boards. Somehow the felt stuck on the felt. It's still like, talk about defying gravity. That one, that one. I don't know how it works, okay? It's amazing. But if you grew up in a church like that or an older type of church, you've probably seen this picture of Jesus around. You ever see that one? Right? I know, you know, we're former Presbyterians. We're not supposed to show images of Jesus, but okay. You know, this picture, look at him. Dirty blonde hair, blue eyes. I mean, no blemishes. Perfectly trimmed beard. And just, you can sense that he's just divine and otherworldly. And I mean, there is no blemish on this guy. I mean, I have a few gray hairs from ministering to you for a couple years. Jesus, he was fully human. I mean, he should, even though he was only in his early 30s, he should definitely have some grays going on for what he had to deal with on a much higher level. I mean, and you know, there's a lot going on with this picture here, but not only is this picture historically inaccurate because, okay, I hate to break it to us, but Jesus wasn't a white guy, okay? He just wasn't. Jesus wasn't a white guy, okay? He was in the Middle East, okay? He was Middle Eastern, okay? But not only that, but I think that this whole thing we've got going on, it kind of communicates a misunderstanding on a deeper level of who Jesus was. See, by this being the commonly known and shared picture of Jesus, I think we may be mistakenly communicating to people that Jesus was neat and tidy and by the book and predictable and uniform, and you know, the kind of person that never disrupted the status quo, right? That guy, you know, you don't have to put him back up. It's inaccurate anyway. I mean, I'm not so sure about that whole caricature of Jesus. Jared C. Wilson puts it this way: Jesus wasn't blowing smoke. His major contribution to the world was not a set of moral principles. He was born in a dirty barn, grew up in a dirty world, got baptized in a muddy river. He put his hands on the oozing wounds of lepers. He let whores brush his hair and soldiers pull it out. He went to dinner with dirtbags, both religious and irreligious. His closest friends were a collection of crude fishermen and cultural traders. He felt the spittle of the Pharisees on his face, and Gwen just felt the spittle of my spittle spittling in the front row. But he felt the spittle. She loves me. She's used to my spittle, okay? Yeah. I'm not in trouble. That's just the reality of it. Okay. We are happily married. But anyway, he felt the spittle. He felt the spittle of the Pharisees on his face and the metal hooks of the jailer's whip in the flesh of his back. He got sweaty and dirty and bloody. And he took all the sin and mess of the world onto himself, onto the cross to which he was nailed naked. We don't know what Jesus looked like. There's no picture. But if I had to pick a picture, man, to illustrate what Jesus really looked like, it would be this one. You know who that is? That's Father Damien. His face ravaged by leprosy, etched with fatigue and years of suffering. His features worn out, totally exhausted. His expression just tired and battle-worn. Yet you can see the love in his eyes. That determined love, that every ounce of pain he endured was worth it all to him. He went to live among the lepers. He shared their food, cleaned their wounds. He wept with them, prayed with them, suffered with them. His love was so deep for the ones he came to minister to that he even became a leper himself. And in the end, his radical love for those people cost him absolutely everything. Now that's Jesus. That's Jesus. The Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus came to live among we lepers. He shared our food and he touched our unclean bodies. He wept with us. He prayed for us. He suffered with us. And his love was so deep for us that he even became a leper himself. He became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. And in the end, his love for us cost us everything. Jesus died a forgotten, abandoned leper, hanging on the cross with no one left standing with him but a few people. That's it. But when we see Jesus face to face, when you look at Jesus face to face, we know, you can know that every ounce of pain and rejection that he endured was all worth it. All worth it to him. I want to close with these beautiful words from Carla Yaconelli. It says this, and this is for you today. Take heart, my friends. You are in good company. You, with all your faults and imperfections, you, with your defects and failures, you, with your hang-ups and emotional scars, you, with your weaknesses and your defects, you, with all your blunders and brokenness and floundering, you are God's beloved, God's favored, the disciple whose name God calls, the one Jesus prefers to hang with, earth with, play with, talk with, cry with, and laugh with. You are the one whom the holy God of heaven and earth longs to spend time with. You are all of this and more. You always have been, and you always